Hey everyone, it's me, HawkeyeG here, and today I wanted to do a video on how I think the Chaos Invasion mechanic could be improved and reworked. So for those of you who aren't as familiar with the recent changes that were made, just go ahead and skip ahead towards the end of the video. I'll mark the section. But if you aren't familiar with the changes that were made, let's review them real quick. So the first change that was made was they added this Chaos Invasion difficulty setting. So you can turn it off so nothing will spawn. You can turn it on, which just keeps it normal. But you can also make it hard, very hard, or legendary. Now, currently, all this difficulty setting does is change the number of armies that spawn in when you play the game, right? That's the first part of what changed. There's another thing that changed, and that's the locations. But I wanted to touch on this Chaos Invasion. So if I mention like the difficulty slider or adjustment, this is what I'm talking about, right? So I just wanted to make sure we had a reference for that. Alright, so the other thing that was changed, and this is the other important thing, is the spawn locations for Chaos. Okay, previously you would have them spawn in the Chaos Waste, like they still do now. This is like probably always going to happen. But they also spawned like the Bear Sonlings, a Norskin faction somewhere around here that would attack the Badlands, and they would spawn another like a Chaos, like the Vassals of Chaos or Vessels of Chaos, something like that, down here in the south that would generally attack Lustria, and then like the Puppets of Chaos, which spawned somewhere just north of the island of Ulthuan and would attack the High Elves. Right, so kind of everybody would get hit, or like you had most of the different parts of the map coming under attack, except for the Dark Elves, right? So along with the rework that changed that, added that difficulty option, right? They changed the spawn locations. So now, currently, you'll get a spawn in the Chaos Wastes. You'll get the Bear Sonlings spawning somewhere up north here in the Kraken Sea, and you get another just like same Warriors of Chaos faction spawn up here in the northwest of this frozen territory. So I want to talk about why, like, first of all, the silver lining, right? Okay, overall, most people don't seem to think that the changes to the Chaos Invasion mechanic were good or like really made it much of an improvement. Like it's a change, right? It's something different, but it wasn't the change that was needed. However, I still think that's a good sign, right? It shows that Creative Assembly is willing to make those kinds of changes, that they are looking at the Chaos Invasion as something that could be worked on or improved somehow, and they tried something. I don't think that it worked perfectly, but they're still willing to try, right? So I think we need to come up with more ideas and more suggestions, better ways to do this Chaos rework. I know we just had the teaser drop for Warhammer 3 as well, or, you know, what we suspect is Warhammer 3. It's pretty reasonable generalization. But so we still have some time, and this is something that should be reworked anyway, or an idea that can be greatly expanded upon, even in the third game. So, first of all, the problem with them spawning up here in this northern territory is, combined with that difficulty setting, is that depending on who you play as, you can kind of manipulate your campaign. Like, say that I'm playing as Itza, right, and I start way down here, I could just set the Chaos Invasion to Legendary and watch them absolutely annihilate, like, Norska and... or not Norska, sorry, the Dark Elves and the Empire and maybe the Dwarves if they're still alive, or the Greenskins. Like, basically, if you're playing as one of the southern factions, you can intentionally increase the difficulty for Chaos so that the northern factions get screwed over, right? And this is something that's been talked about by people before. And so, of course, the alternative is, you know, if you're in the north, you can turn the difficulty down for yourself and kind of make it an artificially easy campaign. Well, I miss when Chaos spawned everywhere, right? When they would attack each little group across the map, right? And people are like, no, that was annoying. I hated getting attacked in Lustria. Well, that's the point. Chaos is supposed to be annoying. They're supposed to make you unhappy. Like, that was nice. So I think that that's one thing that could be changed and improved, right? Is we need to go back to having different spawns. In fact, I think that a big thing that could change is having dynamic spawns, and perhaps having those spawns be dynamic based on the difficulty, right? So let's say you're playing on normal difficulty, it's always going to spawn a faction in the Chaos Waste, and I kind of feel like that makes sense, that no matter what, we always have the main faction coming from here. I think that's something that could be changed. I wouldn't be opposed to it, but I would be surprised if it does change. But like on normal difficulty, there should, no matter who you're playing as, there should be a designated spot for it to spawn to you, right? So maybe if you're playing as some of these like Southwestern Lizardmen, always one spawns here. If you're playing as High Elves, always like a spawn here. If you're playing as Dark Elves, here, etc., right? There should be some preset locations where on whatever difficulty, it's always going to spawn there. And then maybe on normal difficulty, it'll also spawn a wave against your greatest rival, or like whatever might be your most typical rival, right? So if you're playing as the High Elves, it's going to spawn one here, but it's also going to spawn waves against the Dark Elves, right? Or if you're playing as the Lizardmen, I mean, maybe it spawns something in the east here to attack Clan Moors, or maybe it spawns something in the sea here to attack Clan Scryry. Neither of those people are doing too well in my recent campaigns, but you get the idea, right? And so the idea would be, as you up the difficulty, it would make the spawns like less favorable to you, right? So on legendary difficulty, your most prominent rival in the game, it wouldn't spawn anything to fight them. It would spawn one or maybe even two separate like groups to designate to attack you, and it would spawn one to designate like either whoever your strongest ally is currently, right? If you look at people I had military alliance or defensive alliance or even like military access with, or just who has the highest relations with me at the time that it comes in, right? Or just like whoever's a natural ally of mine, right? So like if I'm playing as the Empire, it might just pick the dwarves or the Bretonia if I'm aligned with them sufficiently, right? If I'm playing as like the High Elves, maybe you could say the Lizardmen are a good option, or maybe just some of the human realms, right? I think that would take some fine tuning, but again, the idea is as the difficulty goes up, the spawns get less favorable, right? Like on lower difficulty, it spawns for you because it has to spawn against you, but also spawns against your enemy, and then perhaps also against like the top neutral faction, right? Like, so like High Elves and then Dark Elves, and then maybe like the Lizardmen over here or the Lizardmen here, or like the Greenskins in this campaign, right? The Greenskins and the Empire are both very strong, so maybe they should both get a spawn and have them knocked down. Maybe even on normal difficulty, it just picks by like strength rating, like out of the top 5, you and then like 4 separate races, you and like 3 other races out of the top 5 for it to pit chaos against, right? And again, as you up the difficulty, then it kind of biases it more against the player, where maybe on legendary difficulty for the chaos spawn, it doesn't even like, it looks at who you have the worst relations with, and it just doesn't spawn them anything to fight, like gives them the best opportunity to come back against you. Again, it would be something that would kind of need a little tweaking and limiting, if we look at like who dislikes me the most. I mean, okay, so it is the Dark Elves. Obviously, they're about to die in this particular situation, but you could even see it being like, maybe it spawns one against the Dark Elves, but doesn't spawn one against the Awakened, for example, right? Like, whoever hates me the most isn't actually my strongest rival at that time, and so it ends up spawning one against the Dark Elves anyway, and that could be a potential flaw with it, so it's something that could take some tweaking. But it's just an idea, like, I think in general, having chaos spawn in a better variety of locations would be better for the game. Like, that's one of the things that makes the Vortex campaign kind of interesting sometimes, is there's no, like, perfect solution. You can't, like, oh, I know that chaos is going to spawn here, and I'm going to camp out a bunch of armies around here. That kind of works, but there's enough variety in terms of where it's possible for chaos to spawn, that if you overcommit to one location, chaos just spawns somewhere else, right? So I'd like to see something like that happen, where there's a better variety of possible spawns, and if you're gonna, and I think you could tie it to the difficulty setting, where it becomes more and more biased against the player as you go up into Legendary. The other thing that I think would be helpful for the Chaos Invasion and to pair with this difficulty setting is when they spawn in, they should get a bonus. Right, they should get some significant bonuses. Going from normal to legendary difficulty already gives the AI bonuses to leadership, melee attack, and melee defense, right? I think the same thing should happen with the Chaos Invasion. If you're playing the Chaos Invasion on Legendary, the Chaos Invasion starts with a bonus of an additional, 10 points to melee attack, defense, and 20 to leadership, or something like that, right? Like, you give them this starting bonus that lasts for maybe like 50 turns, and every 10 turns it goes down by a set amount. So if it starts out with like maybe you even go to the complete extreme, right? On Legendary difficulty, give them 20 melee attack and defense to all units, 40 leadership, and after 10 turns that goes down by 4 to like 16, 16, 32, and after another 10 turns it goes down, so on and so forth, right? So by turn 50 they're back to their normal setting. Because how many times have we seen Chaos spawn in, and the problem isn't like just the quantity, right? Like, yeah, we can add more Chaos troops, but they're just gonna die because of, like, again, you saw how strong the Empire is, even in this campaign, right? And we're on the first wave of Chaos. I'm on the first wave of Chaos in this campaign. There's basically no doubt that, like, between the Empire and the Greenskins, like, it's not gonna take much for Chaos to get wiped out, right? They're not like literally, the Warriors of Chaos are already weaker than Reichland coming into the game, right? So they need some kind of bonus to get them started. I think to go in hand in hand with that, the other thing you should give them is a bonus that whenever they, like, take out a settlement, it gives them a small bonus like that, right? For every settlement that they raise and leave a Chaos Monument behind in, they get, like, +1 melee attack, defense, and 2 leadership for all units in their army. Or maybe, like, upkeep reduction for every, like, vassal that they have, or something like that, right? Different bonuses, like maybe for winning a fight you get, like, a temporary, like, 2-turn bonus of 5 melee attack and defense to all units, or maybe for winning a fight they get, like, a 10% health boost that lasts for 5 turns and doesn't stack, right? Something like that. They need something. They need a bonus to start out more powerful so that they can gain momentum. And then as they gain momentum, they should retain it, right? As they start taking over territories and destroying stuff and winning fights, there should be different bonuses that build up that are associated with it. So that if everything goes well for the Chaos Invasion, by the time they're 50 turns in, they've regained the bonuses that they lost from the initial invasion, right? So if they started with the +20 melee attack and defense, theoretically, in an ideal, like, incursion for them, they've gone back up to +20 melee attack and defense by like raising, by destroying and leaving monuments behind in 20 or 30 settlements, right? I think that would make it a bit more interesting and dynamic, right? And so the amount of the bonus that they would get then would just scale off the difficulty, right? Instead of just having this linear increase of armies from, like, going from, like, 10 to 20 from, like, normal to legendary or whatever, you would also have that bonus, right? So their starting bonus would be pretty negligible on normal difficulty, so they'd spawn in a little stronger but not crazy. But on legendary difficulty, they'd spawn in at a really high level of strength, and they'd be able to, like, gain momentum quite easily to retain that kind of strength as they progress through. So, like I said, those are just a couple of ideas, like having different bonuses that would apply to the faction for, like, winning fights, for leaving monuments behind in settlements, for, like, gaining vassals over the Norska, right? If they can vassalize Norska, maybe they get these upkeep reduction bonuses so that they can naturally grow themselves larger by gaining momentum and by succeeding in battle. So, and then the other part of the idea. The last little piece that I want to say is, for those who are aware of, like, the Chaos Gates mod, where there's a mod that allows, like, if Chaos sacks or, like, raises and leaves behind a monument in a settlement, it's possible for that to spawn an army after a certain amount of time. I think that that's something that could be incorporated as well, right? And either it's not enabled unless you turn, like, if the Chaos Invasion is on, it's not enabled. But as soon as you hit hard or very hard, now that's a possibility. And maybe the amount of turns it takes for it to spawn a new army are based off of the difficulty setting, right? So, like, every 15 turns on hard, it spawns a new army. Every 10 turns on very hard. Every 5 turns on legendary. Like, obviously it would take some balance testing and some experimentation to see, like, how much is too much power to give them, how much momentum is too much momentum to give them. But I think, like I said, the whole point is that if Creative Assembly has showed that they're open to making changes to how the Chaos Invasion works. They tried something, and I'm really glad that they tried it. I don't think that it worked perfectly, but I think that it shows that they're willing to change. So I want to give some ideas on what I think would improve it, other than just like, well, we, multiplied the number of armies you have to fight by 2.5 and nothing else changes, right? The thing is if you're playing a legendary difficulty campaign, the AI itself is naturally going to have more armies. So it's not really going to it's not necessarily gonna, work the same, right? If you're playing on legendary difficulty, the legendary AI is just gonna bounce the legendary Chaos Invasion in a similar fashion, even if the numbers are scaled up. You have to do something different to give them an initial burst of momentum and allow them to build up and retain that momentum through successful progress throughout the level. Like anytime they win fights, maybe even if they lose fights, they can still get some kind of bonus for it, or maybe even make the bonuses strong for winning and the penalties stronger for losing, something like that. So I just wanted to share some of these thoughts with the community. I'd love to hear your feedback. These are only a couple of ideas that I've brainstormed over a little bit of time, and I'm sure that there's lots of people with other really good ideas on how the invasion could be improved. I mean, I've even seen people suggest stuff like why don't we bring the Skaven into it? Why don't the Skaven attack some people? What if you made it based on the faction that you choose, if a bunch of Dark Elf rebellions appear when you're playing as the High Elves, or whatever the situation might be depending on the faction that you're playing as. So I'm sure that the community has lots of good ideas. I really hope that people can come up with some ideas of their own. And of course, furthermore, I really hope that Creative Assembly looks at these ideas and takes some of them into consideration. I know there's probably a lot of things going on, but it would really help. I would love to see something like that really break up the monotony of at least the Chaos Invasion aspect of the Mortal Empires campaign. So with that, that's it for me. Thanks for watching this video. If you like more, don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.